Cheers.
I'm really excited that you're here. Thank you for coming to this talk and for giving me your time. I'm really happy to talk about the lessons that I've learned and the mistakes that I made in my work. So hopefully you can learn from them in the work that you do when you graduate. So I have a few things to ask for your help with. Number one, you already did this. But number one is, when I smile at you, please smile at me. Because if I'm presenting and you don't smile back, then I think, oh no, this is going down. Okay. So you already passed that test. Usually, I speak very fast, even in America when everybody speaks English. They tell me to slow down, slow down. So just go like this. Let's practice. Go like this. Everybody, let's practice. So when I go, just tell me slow down, okay? So if I see you do this, then I'll think, oh, I have to slow down, okay? And if you have a question while I'm speaking, just raise your hand, and you can ask it in the middle. Okay, so let's practice that too. If you have a question, okay. Slow down. Okay, so those are my 3 things that I would love your help with. Oh, that's me. So, I used to live in Japan. I lived in Japan from 2002 to 2005 in Shizuoka-ken, Hamamatsu. Actually, my first year I lived in a little town of 3,000 people called Harunocho. Oh, nice. Yeah, Miss Hamamatsu. So I taught in Harunocho. This was one of my classes. And it was a very small high school, very nice high school in a beautiful place. And I taught an international class. And I was able to teach anything I wanted, as long as it was in English and it had to do with the world. And so we decided to do some different service projects and also to learn about different issues around the world. And I went to Cambodia, that was in 2002, during one of the vacations. And when I came back, we had all the students watch a movie called The Killing Fields. It's about Cambodia during the 1970s, 75 to 79, when many people were killed. So we watched this movie and we wrote letters to the man the movie was about because he was still alive, and he wrote us back, and it was a really nice experience where myself and all of the students got very interested in Cambodia. So then, when I was leaving Japan, I organized a bike trip across Cambodia for 5 weeks with some friends. So many people have asked me, oh, how did you start your work? My answer is, I just went on a bike ride. Just for fun, right? Sometimes things that are important in your life just start because you're doing something you're interested in, right? It doesn't mean you have to sit down and plan, how will this look in 20 years, in 5 years, in 2 years? You can say, I'm going to start a small thing now and try it out, right? So for me and my friends, the small thing was we were going to bike across Cambodia and we were going to raise money for an organization that builds schools. And so we funded the construction of a school, and we biked across the country, and we did a lot of projects. And this was one of the schools we helped to fund. We helped to fund like 6 schools in the first couple of years. But then we realized something really important. After I stayed there a little while, I realized something I should have already known. And that is, schools don't teach kids. Schools don't teach people. People do, right? You don't learn from this building. It's a beautiful building, right? You learn from the teachers, right? So actually, I would rather study underneath a tree with no building, with a great teacher, than in a building with nobody there to teach. Okay? So we had funded money for a building, and it was an organization that was building many buildings, but they weren't actually investing in the teachers and the people to improve education. So that was one of my first lessons around development, is that schools don't teach people. Books don't teach people, maybe a little more than at school. Bikes don't teach people things. It's not that, right? You need those things, but the number one thing that you need is to invest in people, right? So that was one of my first lessons in Cambodia. And when I got there, I thought, oh, we'll just build this school and then go home and do something else and go to another country or go to get a job somewhere else. And slowly I started to realize, wow, we spent all this money on this building. I wanted to be the building to work, so I thought I'd stick around a little longer. But I stuck around for 6 years. And it's still taking a lot of time to make that investment really, really valuable. So we started an organization called PEPI. Now it's Promoting Education and Empowering Youth. We had a different name before. And we do youth leadership and education. And at the same time, we started a travel company called PEPI Tours. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. Well, I'll tell you about PEPI first. Okay. So PEPI is an NGO. Have you heard of this word, NGO? I think in Japan we use it too. Non-governmental organization. In America, we sometimes say non-profit organization. And we registered that, and we focus on youth leadership and education. And we work in a small town, about 1 hour drive outside of Siem Reap. Siem Reap is the famous temple town. If you want to take notes, you can. If you don't, I can also make this PowerPoint available to you later. So if you want the PowerPoint, you can send it out. Okay? But if you want to take notes, you're welcome to. I'm just thinking it might be hard to take notes. Okay, so that's where we work, about 65 kilometers outside of Siem Reap. And I already told you a little bit about this, but we changed from, at the beginning, we were investing in things, right? Schools, bikes, things. And now, as we changed to be about investing time in people. So now we fund youth leadership programs and some scholarships, trainings for teachers and students. And here are some of our programs that we've done. This is our first Cambodian manager of our programs. I mean, the number one piece of advice that I would give myself if I could go back in time is, Daniela, you can't run an education program in Cambodia. You don't know Cambodia, right? You don't know Cambodian education. Why don't you find somebody like her and support them and work with them, right? So if I could go back in time and give myself advice, it would be, even though we come from a place with great education, Japan or America or wherever you come from, and you're lucky because you're here in this great school, it doesn't mean that we should go, it doesn't mean we know everything we need to know to run a project in another country, right? We need really smart people from that country who know the culture and the language and the history and the education system, right? So if I could go back in time, I would have searched for somebody like her and do something together or support someone else's work locally. But I didn't come to this lecture when I was in college. I could have used it, so that's another little piece of advice for you. And this is what last year we funded. We have about 25 scholarship students going to university. Okay. And I'm happy to answer other questions about PEPI at the end, but most of my talk I wanted to focus about what I learned from the travel side of what we did. Oh, actually I'm going to do this. So the two things from this work, the two things I started to believe in are, number one, investing in people. Right, you've probably heard this phrase before about teaching a man to fish. Do you know that? So it says, if you're hungry, I could either give you a fish, right, or teach you how to fish. Right? If I give you a fish, you only have a fish for one day. Right? So if we're giving out things, sometimes we are just giving out fish. Right? But if we're helping support people to learn the things that they want to learn, then we don't need to have development anymore, right? I think the goal of a nonprofit organization or the goal of a volunteer if you went to another country should be to work yourself out of a job. What that means is when you come there and then you leave, the goal should be that the system runs better without you. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So the other thing I want to touch on is social entrepreneurship, social enterprise. Have you guys heard this word? Maybe it's not such a popular word yet in Japan. Okay, what's an enterprise? English vocabulary test. What is another word for like an enterprise? What? Yeah, like a corporation, an organization, a business, and an enterprise, something that you're starting, something that you're taking on. And social, in this case, it doesn't mean social like social media, Facebook, Twitter. This is a different meaning for social. Do you have a guess?
It's like social business.
Yeah. And what does social business mean? What is a social business?
We should earn money, but it is for people. And
Yeah, perfect. So it's a business or an enterprise, and it's for the people or society, right? So social enterprise is taking business practices and doing good things with that. Okay, so one of the themes of what I wanted to talk about was that sometimes we think, oh, nonprofits are good. Oh, business is bad. And actually, I don't think that's true. Some nonprofits are very good, and unfortunately, some nonprofits are not very good. Right? So if you're going to give your money or your time to a nonprofit, you have to ask a lot of questions to make sure you're giving your money and your time to a good nonprofit. Right? We'll talk a little bit more about the kind of questions you can ask. But you know what I wish everybody would have? I wish everybody would have a t-shirt that said, I ask questions. Right? I ask questions. Because the number one thing that we can do wrong here is not ask any questions. Right? If somebody comes up to you and says, give me money for this project in some poor country, right? And you just give them money, maybe we're giving money to something that's not very good. Right? If somebody comes to you and says, you should vote for me for class president, or for prime minister, or anything, right? And you say, okay, sure, and you don't ask any questions, you could be voting for something that's not very good, right? So when we give our money, when we give our time, when we vote, when we choose something, I think we vote with our money every day. Every time we buy something, we're voting with our money, right? We're saying, I want more of that in the world, right? When we buy more plastic bottles, we are voting for more plastic bottles, right? And so if we do all of these things, voting with our money and our time and our votes, without asking any questions, then we are allowing problems to continue and grow. Okay? So I don't think some nonprofits are great, some nonprofits are not great. Same thing with businesses. Some businesses are great, some businesses are not so great. So I just wanted to touch on that. And there's a lot of things that we can do that are really good for the world through social businesses. And I can give some examples in a second. If you have questions at the end about this, I have a lot of thoughts on this too. So this is what I teach about now in my work. So that was a video we made a few years ago. Now watching it now, I haven't seen it in a while. I think it's actually a little bit, and I don't know how I feel about that video actually. But it was a way to help tell people a bit about the situation in Cambodia before. And I think now in Cambodia, I want to go back to that point where I said I would want to invest in a great Cambodian leader. If I went back in time, there's a lot of really awesome young Cambodian leaders doing really cool things, lots of cool social businesses. And so if you go there, you can reach out to me and I can connect you to them. But I think that that is already starting to happen. The next generation of really creative and powerful young people who had the opportunity to have a great education. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the tour side of what we do, or what we've done. So, Kepi Tours used to offer voluntourism trips. What do you think voluntourism means? So you know tourism, yeah? And how about voluntourism? What two words is it combining? Tourism and? Yeah, volunteering. Okay, so the word voluntourism is volunteering tourism. That's what we used to offer. So you could come on a trip with us and then volunteer. And you would paint or build or do something. And what we started to realize was that we were telling people that, like I said before, just because they came from Japan or America or the UK, that they should get off the plane and say, "Hello, I'm here to help you." And actually, I don't really believe in that anymore. I think it's fostering a moral imperialism, too big of a word that I made up, but it's fostering this idea that just because we are from a wealthy country, we can help in a place that we don't know about, right? So instead, what I think we should say is we get off the plane and say, "Hi, I'm here to learn from you how I can be of help, now or in the future." Not, "Hi, I'm here to help you," right? Because "Hi, I'm here to help you" makes me powerful and you small, right? Instead, "Hi, I'm here to learn from you." That makes me say, you know, you're the expert in this place. It's your country, it's your language, it's your history, it's your future. I'm here to learn from you how I can be of help. Please tell me how I can be of help, now or in the future. It could be that you go and you learn and you go back and you help by raising funds or spreading awareness or changing how you vote or changing how you buy, right? So we changed our trips. Our trips used to be about building things, painting things, building things. And now they are about learning, development education. We have debates and discussions. People read articles every night and discuss the issue. And probably they leave with a lot more questions than answers. Because the main thing I learned in Cambodia is that development work is really complicated. Sometimes fundraising messages, like the video you just saw, make it seem really easy. Maybe you have seen an ad in the train or somewhere that says, "Give 1,000 yen, save this girl's life." Right? I promise you, nobody can take 1,000 yen and go save somebody's life like that. It's not that easy. It's complicated, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We should try and do it, but we have to do it in a way that's a little more complicated than unfortunately. I could get, you know, the other ad that we see very often is about bed nets. You know, mosquito nets? Right? It says, "1 bed net can save a life." I could give you 100 bed nets tomorrow, right? And you could go give those out to 100 people in Cambodia or Ghana or somewhere. But to save 100 lives takes more than that. What time of day do mosquitoes bite? You know, do you have mosquitoes here? What time of day do they bite? In the morning, at night, do you know? When is the time where you get the most mosquito bites? What time usually? Yeah, right at night, right when it becomes night, at dusk. Are you, sorry, you raised your hand. Is that what you were going to say? Yeah. Right at night, right? And are you usually in your bed just when the sun goes down? don't, right? When the sun started to go down. So it's the same thing. Yes, we need bed nets. It's a very important part of preventing malaria. It's important. But we also need hospitals that treat it. We need to understand how to prevent mosquitoes from growing, spreading. We need to understand, does my child have malaria or is he just sick? Which remedies work, which remedies don't, right? So a lot of that is about learning and understanding and networks and investing in people. And a small part of that is the thing, right? The bed net. So sometimes we make it seem really easy about a thing, but a lot of times it's about people. So that's what our tours are about now. Development, education. Come and learn and debate. Because we believe it's not how you can save the world in a week, right? A lot of volunteer trips, they say, come help, come save the world, right? But actually, you can save the world together over the rest of your life, right? By changing the way our governments work, by changing the way our products are manufactured, by changing the way that we live, right? And 1 week in another country can really help you learn about that. Right? That we can't live our life every day, and then volunteer 1 week every year in an orphanage, and then go back and live our life. It's like carbon offsetting. Have you guys heard of carbon offsetting? Do you know what that is? No? Okay, then I know. Carbon offsetting is it's something you can do where you can donate money in exchange for the carbon that you burn. Like if you fly in a plane or you ship things, you travel a lot, and you're burning carbon and burning gas. You can pay somebody money to offset it. It's kind of like in some religions, like in Christianity, you can go and confess your sins and then get it erased, right? So I think in this idea, imagine you have a big business and you're polluting this river, right? You're putting lots of bad things into the river. And then next year you say, oh, we're going to clean this river over here. Right? It doesn't balance out. Right? It's good that we're cleaning this river. I'm very happy that we are volunteering or cleaning a river or carbon offsetting. But we should stop polluting this river in the first place. Right? So when we go abroad and help, we have to remember it's not just about that 1 week. It's about how we live our lives after we get back and for the rest of our lives. So this is a picture from one of our trips. We're doing a forced debate. Actually, they're debating the Khmer Rouge trials because we went to see part of the trials, and some people who think the trials are very important for peace and understanding. And then we went and met a Cambodian documentary filmmaker who thinks the trials are a waste of money because it costs almost $1 billion. So there's a lot of different debates. Is it important? Is it not? There's no right answer. Right? So we debated these to try and understand the situation. I already touched on this a little bit, but there's some vocabulary words that I think are sometimes dangerous. If we say, I'm a volunteer and you're a beneficiary, it's that same power problem I was talking about, right? I'm a volunteer means I'm better than you. I'm giving you something, you have to say thank you. That's kind of backwards, right? If we're going to someone else's country and we don't know much about the country, a lot of times they have to help us a lot, right? Today when I landed in Tokyo, I had to ask maybe 20 Japanese people for help. Oh, right? I was lost. Many people helped me along the way. And the same thing will happen if you go to another country to try and help. Many people will help you, right? Because you won't know what food to eat or where to stay or how to get around. So we can look at it instead as an exchange because we are benefiting too. Right? I think that's important. And in North America, we use this word a lot called service learning. I don't know if you use it here. But usually in schools and universities in North America, they say service learning instead of volunteering because they say, okay, I understand I'm serving, which means volunteering. I'm giving my time, but I'm also learning. Okay? And I think it's backwards. It should be learning service, right? Instead of I'm serving, oh, I made a mistake. Well, at least I learned. It should be the other way. We have to learn before we can serve, right? So when we get off the plane, we say, hi, I'm here to learn from you. Because I know I can't help in a problem that I don't know about, right? I need to understand what's been done before and who should I work with and who's doing things well, right? So when you're going out and you look at volunteer projects to join or nonprofits to work with or things that you want to start yourself, just remember, learning is a very, very important part of serving, and it comes first and throughout. Because sometimes imagine you have 2 students in your class over the summer break. One of them says, I went to volunteer in Cambodia and I helped to build a school. And another says, I went to Sri Lanka on a learning trip. Right? Sometimes we think, oh, the person who went to Sri Lanka is very selfish. They just went to learn. Right? And the person who went to Cambodia, that's very nice. They went to volunteer. And actually, I think that's a little bit confused, right? Because there is a Mahayana Buddhist symbol called the Vajra, and what it says is, let me see if I can get it right. Hold on. Okay. Action before learning is ignorance. I'm sorry. Hey, I messed up. Okay. Action without learning is ignorance. Action without learning is ignorance. Learning without action is selfishness. Okay, so if we go and we act without doing any learning from it, right, that's ignorance. That can be really harmful. But if we learning without action, well, that's selfish, right? So if that person went to Sri Lanka and just, only for learning for themselves and didn't care about their impact. But if they went to learn and understand the world and become a better citizen because of it, I think that's fantastic, right? I think we should all travel abroad. But I think we should have a learning mindset on first, asking that question, how can I use what I'm learning to help? Maybe now, or maybe in the future. Remember, if you have a question, raise your hand. And nobody's been doing this. Am I talking slow enough? Yeah? Okay. We're going to skip that, actually. Okay. So here's some tips. So how do I find a responsible program? If you're looking to go abroad, and you're considering some volunteer trips, ask about the impact. Because a lot of people ask questions like, where am I sleeping? Am I sleeping in a tent? Will somebody pick me up at the airport? What do I need to pack? What kind of food is there? Sure, ask those questions. But also ask, where did this project idea come from? Did it come from a local person? Or can you ask about, why are we building this school? Ask questions about the impact of the work. If they can't answer the question, you probably don't want to go travel with them, right? Because there's a lot of travel companies out there that will charge you a lot of money to go do something that maybe isn't needed, but they just know people are willing to pay. Okay, so ask questions about the impact. Ask about the funding. Ask them, where is my money going? They should be able to show you and tell you where your money is going. Okay? If they can't tell you about where your money's going, also, again, maybe you don't want to travel with them. Sometimes the money might be going just to teaching you, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes organizations will say, a percentage of your money goes to the project. And I have seen many young people like yourselves go on trips. This was an example trip. They thought they were painting a school, and they were sleeping in tents, and it was raining, and they were covered in water because it was so poorly organized, and they thought, oh, I'm suffering because my money is going to the school. It's okay. But actually, none of their money went to the school. The organization didn't give any of their money to the school, right? So you're going to ask about that, see if those things are true. Okay, And ask about relationships. If you go on a website and some company is selling volunteer trips in 25 countries, even 10 countries, to me that is a big question mark, a big red flag. How do they know what's going on in these places? How are they maintaining relationships, right? Or do they just take some trip from somewhere else and stick it on their website without really having and building relationships? So ask about that. Do they have staff on the ground? Who follows up on these projects afterward? Things like that. Okay. And ask about learning, because it's important that there's education for you as a traveler before you go and while you're there. Okay? Because just like you know, in Japan, we are supposed to hand a business card with 2 hands, right? Many foreigners don't do that, right? Because we don't have that in our culture. It's not too offensive, but in some other cultures, I mean, maybe it's offensive, but usually in Japan you might know, oh, they're a foreigner. They don't know, right? There's a lot of things that we do every day that can be really offensive to somebody else, right? The clothes that we wear, if we're wearing, if we have exposed shoulders in Cambodia inside a temple, it would be very rude, right? Or the words that we use, or for a monk, right? A woman cannot touch a monk in Theravada Buddhism, right? And if she doesn't know that and she goes to shake a monk's hand, it could be very rude, right? So we have to learn before we go to a new place, to volunteer or just to travel. So ask about that learning. Okay, and I'm going to show you, we have a website called learningservice.info. Oh, I unplugged it. We have a website called learningservice.info, and I just want to show it to you really quickly so you can see. We have resources and guides, so you can go on here and you can download a guide, and it gives you much more detail than what I'm talking about. Questions to ask in a volunteer placement, if you are volunteering, things that you can do to make sure you have a positive impact. And then we also have a lot of videos. So I'll just show you the beginning of one of them, but I think they could be very useful for you if you're thinking about going abroad to volunteer. So let's look at this one.
Check that volunteers are not taking away local jobs or creating dependency. Some organizations take on foreign volunteers when local person could be paid to do the same job. If your specific skills are hard to come by locally, make sure that part of your role is to train local staff so they can take over when you leave.
Assess the impact of the organisation that you're looking to volunteer with. Ask them how they measure their success. Providing books, for example, is not the same as teaching reading skills, and will not necessarily improve literacy rates in the same way. Do your research, and don't be afraid to ask critical questions.
Ready?
Yeah.
Make sure the goal of the organization are driven by local people. Important decisions should be made by the people, family with the needs, and culture of the local.
Because I'm going to show you one part of another video. So there's a series of videos like that that could be useful for you. I just wanted to show you so you can see where you can go. This one's a little bit more fun, so I'll just show you a little part of this one. So here's a different one. This one is finding a responsible placement. This one is while you're on the ground, how to be a valuable volunteer. This one is when you return, so how do I translate what I learned abroad into my time back at home. This one is specifically about orphanage tourism and the problem with orphanage tourism and volunteering in orphanages. We'll talk about that in a sec. This one is about how can I do good in the world. We'll talk about that in a sec too. And this one is tips for the responsible traveler for Southeast Asia. So anyone who's going to Southeast Asia should watch this video. So one of the videos was about how can I do good in the world, right? So we came up with this model because I'm working on a book with some people about learning service, about this idea of putting the learning first in service. And then we've interviewed many, many young people and retirees and people of all ages who are volunteering or want to volunteer. And almost all of them answered the question with, why do you want to volunteer? With the answer that they're looking to do good in the world. They want to do good, right? And they're being sold an opportunity to do good by volunteering. And so what we wanted to do is come up with and look at other ways all around, kind of this volunteering concept that you can do good. And the number one thing that we learned, or that we believe, is that personal development and global development are interlinked. Like I said before, the person who went to Sri Lanka to just learn, it's all connected. If I want to improve the world, I have to improve me. right? The best way that you can improve the world is by improving yourself, and through improving yourself, you improve the world because you learn about different issues that you care about. You're smarter about how you give your money and your time. And then it's about your attitudes and your knowledge and skills. All of those things before action. So for example, when I worked in Cambodia and I managed a team, we grew our team, eventually we had 50 employees, and sometimes I was so stressed that I would be really, really grumpy, right? I would be not a good manager. How am I doing good in the world if I'm not even nice to the people around me, right? So it starts with our actions, our attitudes. Okay, I got 10 things, 10 misconceptions about doing good. And I'll go through these and then we'll do some questions. I know everyone's tired and it's the end of the day. So, here we go. Okay, we talked about this already a bit. Nonprofits are good, business is bad. No, I don't think that's true. Right? We have to ask questions. I want to tell you a quick little bit about a social enterprise. Do you want to learn about this social enterprise? We already talked about what a social enterprise is, right? This is a solar company in Tanzania that I worked for a few years ago. Have you guys seen solar panels? Right? So there's a lot of nonprofits over the last 10 years that have been giving away or selling solar panels to people who live off of the grid. So imagine you buy a solar panel and you stick it on your roof. Do you think solar panels are cheap? No, they're kind of expensive, right? They're more expensive than candle or than kerosene. So you have a very expensive thing on your roof, right? What happens if it breaks? Right? What happens if somebody steals it? You borrowed money or you saved up all this money to have this thing on your roof. Also, if I'm trying to sell a solar panel to somebody who is not doesn't have a lot of money, who is poor, do you think it's a very expensive solar panel? Or do you think it's the cheapest solar panel I can make? Right? I'm going to try and make the solar panel so cheap so you can afford it. But the problem is when I make something so cheap, it will break more often, right? Okay, so we're selling people something because we try to make it so cheap so they can afford it, and then it breaks. When I went to Tanzania, we went to some communities and we drove around, and there was 5 solar panels here and 4 solar panels here. These ones from the Clinton Foundation, that one from the Gates Foundation, this one from a Japanese organization. And all of them were broken because there was no spare parts and nobody there to fix it, and someone had just given it away, right? So this is an interesting company. What they do is they have a very small panel, and it's very cheap to put on your roof. And what you do is you pay just a little bit every week for the light. But if it breaks, they have to fix it, or you don't have to pay. You never own it. You are just buying a service of light, and you can pay a little more and have more lights. You can pay a little more and you can have a radio. And it's just an interesting model that makes it affordable and means that you have a very good solar panel on your roof. Because this business wants to make money if that solar panel lasts. Okay. We talked about it. Investing in things rather than people. Right? We need to invest in people first. Remember we talked about bed nets. Bed nets don't save a life. Wells do not provide clean water. Wells provide water. Usually it's not clean. What matters is if it's clean when it goes in your mouth. So are you keeping it in a clean container? Do you have a filter in your home? More is not always better. Okay, number 3, giving things away can destroy markets, like I just talked about with the solar panels. Sometimes we give it away and it gets broken, or sometimes we give it away and then no businesses can form because we're giving things away. I'm going to push through so we can get to some questions. Okay, to be a responsible global citizen, it should say you don't have to go abroad. No X. I agree, you don't have to go abroad. You can be a global citizen right at home by learning about the world and being responsible with how we buy and live. Okay, this one is important. Many volunteer programs are in orphanages. And UNICEF, a UN organization, released a report last year, 2 years ago in Cambodia, that almost all of Cambodian young people living in orphanages are not orphans. Most of them, 76% of them, have at least one living parent, and almost 100% of them have extended family that they could live with. And what is happening is that we are paying so much money to volunteer or visit orphanages or donate that actually people are going to families and saying, let your child come study in my school, the foreigners will teach them. Give me your cute young daughter. Right? And they're using kids, in many cases, to make money. So imagine somebody from America, Zimbabwe, anywhere, could walk into your little sister's kindergarten and play with her for a day and go home. You wouldn't like that, right? Someone could just walk off the street and play with your little cousin and leave, right? We don't think that's okay in our country, right? So it shouldn't be okay in another country. So be careful about this one, okay? Support organizations that are keeping kids with families. There's a website called orphanages.no if you want to know more. Okay, impossible things shouldn't be tried. I don't think that's true. Every crazy idea that has ever been tried, somebody said it was impossible first. And things like, imagine the first guy who said, let's get power from the wind, right? That's totally a social enterprise when it started. And now almost every country is investing in wind power, right? So just because an idea seems crazy doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You should try. Start with the learning and then go on. Here is something I want to challenge you on. Okay. Today, when I checked into my plane in London, there was a Japanese lady at the check-in counter, and she saw my passport. My passport is from Italy, because my dad is from Italy. And she said, oh, my daughter was just studying in Italy, and she was doing some work with homeless people. She said, oh, but in Japan, the homeless people are not real homeless people. So what I want to challenge you on is thinking about these kind of biases and these ideas that people tell you that might not be true, and that you can go find out and ask questions and learn about yourself. When I worked in Japan, I worked in an office, and we did a project where we collected clothes to give away for Nepal. And people donated so many things, and we went to Nepal and we gave it away, even though now I don't believe in giving things, but people were very generous. So I came back and I said, well, why don't we do this for the homeless people in Hamamatsu? Because actually there's a lot of homeless people there, just like in Tokyo here. And nobody in the office wanted to give. Because they all believed this idea that homeless people had chosen to be there. So I want to challenge you about that idea and other ideas, and talk to my, if you don't know about these issues and you just hear a little bits of information, go do some research. Go volunteer for a day in a homeless shelter. Go find out about this, right? Because I actually think sometimes the biases that people have in the world are not always true. And if we act on those, then actually we're furthering a problem, and we're putting all our energy outside of our backyard when we could help people in our own backyard too. So like, we do all of this work about education in Cambodia, and some of my staff also had similar ideas. They say, oh, the Korean tourists that come to Cambodia, some of them are, one of my staff said, I won't work with the Korean tourists, because he had worked with a few Korean tourists who weren't very nice to him, right? And I said, I can't have an employee on my team who says one whole country I don't like, right? So I said, go out and meet some Korean people, and you tell me, you meet 10 Korean people, and you tell me if they're all really so bad, right? And so he went and he realized, actually, some people in Cambodia are mean, some people are not. Some people in Korea might be mean, some people are not, right? We're all people. So I want to challenge you, if somebody tells you that everyone from this country, or everyone from this place, or everyone from there is selfish, or lazy, or mean, challenge that. Because I bet in no case is that everybody true. Okay. There's a phrase that I really like that says, there is nobody you couldn't love if you knew their story. There's nobody that you couldn't love if you knew their story. So ask people's stories to find out. Okay, almost done. We have this idea that we can change other people. Unfortunately, it's wrong. Okay? You cannot change anybody. The only person you can change is yourself. You can inspire somebody else to change by being really kind to others, or by doing something brave. You can help other people be brave, inspiring them to do it, but you can't change somebody. You can only change yourself, right? So there's something about leadership that says the best leaders in the world are the people who realize that 80% of the things that go wrong, they could have controlled. Usually, people realize that 20% of the time. So for example, you get up late, or you don't hear your alarm, and you're late, and you say, oh, the traffic was so bad, my alarm didn't go off, right? And really what we could say is, oh, I should have set my alarm earlier, right? I could have done something wrong. Or when you come to me, and you give me the work I told you to do, and it's all wrong, I could say, oh, you're so stupid, you didn't do the work right? Or I could say, I didn't explain it very well, right? So the best leaders realize that in order to fix a problem, we can change ourselves. We can change our own actions. Right? Same things with our own countries. We think the problems are outside of our countries. We're going to go fix it. We come back. Actually, we can come back and we can fix a lot of these things by changing our own governments, the way that we work, the way that we vote, what we want more of in the world. Okay? And we can give feedback to people. Not feedback as a gun. Hey, you are being so, I don't like you. Instead, we give it as a gift. We can give our feedback as a gift to people. I think this is the biggest thing that we miss out on. Especially in college. I remember, nobody likes this person because this person is talking too much in class, and everybody talks about them. Oh, he talks so much, But when he goes by, oh, hi, right? Be nice and go up to him and say, hey, I just want to let you know, when you ask so many, obviously you're so smart, and you ask so many great questions, right? But there's other people who are less shy than you. So why don't you I give you a challenge. Why don't you let 2 other people ask a question first, and then you ask a question. Or help them in a nice way, because they don't know that everybody's talking about them, right, behind their back. So if you're talking about somebody in a mean way, be braver, be better than that, be bigger than that, and go help them out. And give them some kind feedback as a gift, not being mean to them behind their back. Okay, 2 more. Do what the world needs. I think that's wrong. If you go out and you become a doctor just because you think the world needs more doctors, or because your parents told you to be a doctor, and you really don't want to be a doctor, you probably will not be very happy. I hope that you either go out and change your degree if you're studying now and no one yells at me, or you make that change later. If you're doing something that you really don't want to do, you're not going to be very good at it. Right? So there's a great phrase that says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go out and do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Okay, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go out and do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And what that means is, let's say you really want to be a filmmaker. You could make films about important issues in the world. You can help teach the world about environmental crises or different social injustices, right? You could own a restaurant and you can let all of the local nonprofits use that restaurant for that space, and you can buy all organic food and teach people about where their food came from. You can do good in the world with whatever it is that you're passionate about, right? And if you're doing something that you love, you'll be good at it. When I graduated from college, I went and worked for a consulting company. And I worked at a computer all day. I was wearing a business suit every day. And I quit my job after a year. And I said, I will never wear a business suit again. I hate working behind a computer. Turns out, when I was running Peppy, I was behind a computer more hours in the day. And actually, I ended up going to business school, so I had to wear business suits every now and again. So it wasn't the business suit, and it wasn't the computer. What it was that I didn't care about the work we were doing. It didn't matter to me. I didn't think it was doing good in the world, right? But once I started to do something that I cared about, I would wake up and, oh my gosh, I can't wait to write that report. It doesn't mean that every day will be fun, right? You still have to do accounting, and sorry if you're studying accounting, but I think accounting is really boring. Some people don't. If you do, good. We need good accountants in the world, so good for you if you're studying accounting. But you always will have to do some things that are boring, right? It doesn't mean your job's going to be fun every day, right? But if you believe in what you're doing, if you care about the outcome of what you're doing, you will do it better, you will enjoy it, you will attract good people to you, and your life will be better. So that's not selfish. That's actually good for the world. It's for you to go do stuff that you care about that is good for the world. Last one is a question mark. Saying, I want to get something from you. Tell me one thing that you learned from this, or one thing you want to add to this. Does anyone have something that they want to add to this? Or a thought? I'm going to let you ponder on that. Maybe we'll go straight into Q&A and you can tell me something that you learned from this. But I guess what you could look at this as is like, what's your motto? What's the thing that matter to you? What are the lessons that you've learned, right? And if you can write that in a way, sometimes when I write these things down, it helps me do them more, right? So for example, PEPI used to be, the organization used to be, what was it? Yeah, protect the earth, protect yourself, because it was about the environment in the beginning, about educating about the environment. So I would be in our office, I lived in an apartment above our office, and I would be going to bed and I would see that there's a light on downstairs. And I'm like, oh, Peppy, I have to go turn the stupid light off, right? Because I had made this doing all these talks about the environment, right? It holds me responsible to live the values that I say that I want to live. Do I get it right all the time? No. Do I still buy plastic bottles a lot when I need them? I think I bought 3 today. Yes. Do I feel bad about it? Yeah. Do I try and change it? Do I work towards being better at the values that I talk about? Yes, right? So think about what's important to you. Who do you want to be? Write that down. Put that on your wall. Put it in your K-tag, right? Put it somewhere and remind yourself, this is who I want to be. Right? And so when you're talking bad about stuff behind someone's back, or when you're not trying hard on something, or when you're doing something that's not who you want to be, you can say, okay, this isn't who I want to be. I want to be this person, this thing that I wrote down. And that, I think, is how we do good in the world. And that is how we become a global citizen. Is by improving ourselves, we can improve the world. So that is all from me. Those are our websites, and you can feel free to write me a note or visit us. Thank you very much.